By 1710, Bruges had settled into a period of relative quiet, following the decline it suffered during the late 16th century. The city retained remnants of its medieval infrastructure, including canals, cobbled streets, and fortified walls, framing the urban environment that persisted into the 18th century. The geographic location of Bruges, situated in the northwestern region of the county of Flanders, remains significant despite its diminished maritime dominance. Its inland position, slightly removed from the North Sea, limited access to major seafaring trade routes, influencing both commerce and civic planning. Bruges' economy in the early 18th century was modest compared with its former wealth. The once thriving cloth industry had contracted, yet small-scale textile production continued, providing employment to artisans and maintaining a level of commercial activity, although revenues were substantially lower than in the 15th century. Local governance was conducted through a city council and magistrates, reflecting traditions inherited from medieval self-rule. These institutions managed civic regulations, tax collection, and public order, maintaining continuity even as external political pressures from surrounding territories influenced urban administration. The population of Bruges during this period was concentrated in the city center, with dense residential quarters near marketplaces and canals. Housing was often constructed of brick, with timber framing and steeply pitched roofs, reflecting the architectural norms of the Low Countries in the 18th century. Markets continued to serve as central nodes of economic activity. Weekly and seasonal markets facilitated the exchange of cloth, agricultural produce, and imported goods, sustaining both the local economy and connections with nearby towns such as Ghent and Ypres. Social stratification remained evident. The patrician class, composed of hereditary merchants and guild members, retained influence over municipal decisions. Their wealth was increasingly symbolic, marking a distinction from the working population engaged in artisanal production and small-scale commerce. The canals of Bruges, though no longer primary trade conduits, were maintained to support limited transport of goods. Barges and small vessels navigated these waterways, linking storage facilities and workshops, while also serving local transportation needs for residents and municipal authorities. Guilds continued to exert control over professional practice, particularly in textiles, shoemaking, and brewing. Membership conferred both social status and economic privilege, enforcing standards of quality while regulating apprenticeships and competition within the city. The city's churches remained significant centers of social and cultural life. Parish communities organized religious festivals and charitable activities, contributing to social cohesion. Architectural maintenance and commissioned artworks underscored the continuing influence of ecclesiastical institutions. Agricultural activity around Bruges supplied urban markets. Small farms and pasturelands provided grain, vegetables, and dairy products. These surrounding lands were often leased by the city or patrician families, reflecting the integration of rural and urban economic systems in the 18th century. Political pressures from the Austrian Netherlands influenced Bruges indirectly. Habsburg administrative policies introduced standardized taxation and legal oversight, which reshaped the fiscal responsibilities of the city council and altered the balance between local autonomy and central authority. Population pressures were moderate. Birth and death rates stabilized, contributing to a steady, though unremarkable, urban growth. This demographic stability allowed municipal authorities to plan modest improvements in infrastructure and public services without major disruption. Cultural life in Bruges reflected enduring Flemish traditions. Public ceremonies, musical events, and theatrical performances persisted in public squares and guild halls, sustaining civic identity despite reduced political and economic prominence relative to other urban centers. The decline of maritime trade forced Bruges to adapt economically. Local merchants increasingly relied on overland trade networks to maintain commerce. Connections with inland markets enabled a modest recovery of financial activity, though the city never regained the dominance of previous centuries. Education was largely confined to elite institutions. Latin schools and private tutors provided instruction to children of wealthy families, ensuring literacy and preparation for roles in administration or trade. Literacy among lower classes remained limited, restricting broader access to civic participation. Social consequences of economic contraction were apparent. Skilled workers faced reduced demand for their products, while some patrician families lost wealth through declining trade revenues. These pressures fostered gradual demographic shifts as laborers sought employment elsewhere, subtly reshaping urban society. Infrastructure improvements were slow but deliberate. Repairs to bridges, public buildings, and canal locks were conducted incrementally, reflecting both fiscal caution and recognition of long-term urban sustainability. These structural considerations ensured the city remained functional despite constrained resources. Medical and sanitary conditions were modest. City authorities managed waste removal and water access, but outbreaks of disease, though less frequent than in earlier centuries, occasionally disrupted daily life and necessitated coordinated public responses. Religious observance remained influential in shaping moral and social norms. Confraternities, charitable institutions, and parish organizations regulated behavior, provided aid to the poor, and reinforced a sense of communal responsibility among residents. By the mid-1720s, Bruges demonstrated the ability to maintain civic order and cultural continuity. The city's institutions, while less powerful than in previous centuries, continued to provide stability and a framework for gradual adaptation to economic and political realities. Long-term structural reflection suggests that Bruges' urban form and institutional arrangements of the early 18th century provided a resilient framework. Despite diminished maritime influence, the city's canals, guild systems, and municipal governance enabled it to persist as a coherent urban community capable of gradual economic and social adaptation. This careful balance of heritage, governance, and local enterprise established Bruges as a city able to navigate the challenges of the 18th century. The persistence of civic structures, combined with modest economic activity, defined the city's character and informed its subsequent development through the later decades. By the late 1730s, Bruges' economy showed slight diversification. Small-scale trade in luxury goods, including lace and fine textiles, complemented traditional markets, while artisanal production continued under guild oversight, ensuring a degree of economic resilience despite broader regional competition. Political oversight from the Austrian authorities continued to shape fiscal policies. Taxes on property, trade, and guild operations increased municipal revenues while requiring careful negotiation between city officials and Habsburg administrators to preserve a measure of local autonomy. Population growth remained stable but uneven. New households tended to form within existing quarters, placing incremental pressure on housing and public services. The city's ability to adapt incrementally prevented significant social unrest or urban congestion, sustaining long-term civic cohesion. Economic, social, and political trends in Bruges between 1710 and 1740 reflected a city in cautious equilibrium. Declining trade, modest population growth, and sustained institutional continuity combined to create a controlled urban environment, establishing conditions that would shape the remainder of the 18th century. By 1740, Bruges had further consolidated its role as a regional center for small-scale commerce. Despite diminished international trade, local markets remained active, sustaining livelihoods for artisans, shopkeepers, and transporters, while the city preserved its administrative structures inherited from earlier centuries. The city's geography continued to influence economic patterns. Situated inland, Bruges depended on canals linking warehouses and workshops. While no longer a major port, its location allowed modest trade connections with Ghent and coastal towns, maintaining a functional, though limited, transportation network. Textile production, though reduced, remained central to Bruges' economy. Skilled weavers, dyers, and tailors supplied both local and regional markets, preserving a heritage of craftsmanship. Guild regulations ensured quality control while maintaining social hierarchies among artisans and merchants. Municipal governance balanced local interests with Habsburg oversight. City officials administered property regulations, tax collection, and legal matters, operating under increasingly standardized Austrian administrative frameworks that subtly shifted the balance between autonomy and central authority. Housing continued to reflect historical patterns. Narrow streets lined with brick and timber homes accommodated multi-generational families. Canals provided water for domestic use and industry, while architectural consistency reinforced the city's identity as a compact and orderly urban settlement. Markets functioned as social hubs. Residents exchanged goods and news in public squares, sustaining civic interaction. Seasonal fairs attracted merchants from surrounding towns, contributing to local prosperity and reinforcing Bruges' enduring regional relevance despite its declining international prominence. social structures exhibited continuity. The patriciate retained influence through council representation and guild leadership, while artisans and laborers formed the city's economic backbone. Wealth remained concentrated among long-established families, shaping patterns of opportunity and civic participation. Canals, though less central to maritime trade, were carefully maintained. Barges transported goods locally, linking workshops, storage facilities, and markets. Water management was critical to prevent flooding, protect infrastructure, and preserve Bruges' characteristic urban environment. Guilds continued to enforce professional standards. Membership provided economic security and social recognition, regulating apprenticeship programs, pricing, and production methods. This institutional stability ensured that skills and knowledge were transmitted across generations. Churches remained influential beyond spiritual life. Confraternities and charitable activities promoted social cohesion. Religious festivals punctuated the civic calendar, reflecting both devotional practice and the city's collective identity during periods of limited economic expansion. Agriculture surrounding Bruges supplied markets with grain, dairy, and vegetables. Small farms and leased lands integrated urban and rural